Story 1. Swipe on most girls you match with if you are using dating applications. Cut the small talk and ask them out if you feel there is enough initial chemistry in the first couple of days. Coffee or drinks with reservations at the restaurant or nearby. If it goes well, take them to lunch or dinner and tell them you expected it to go well, so you planned ahead. If it doesn't work out, you lose a few dollars and you don't have to wait on your food or the check to run away. When I was single, average-looking man, I was going on 3 to 4 coffee or drink dates a week for almost a year before I met my wife. Granted, most would not lead to long-term relationships, but it's not about finding the one. It's about gaining experience on how to handle awkward situations so when you find the one, you are comfortable and experienced enough to make it work. If you don't have experience on how to talk to women, your chances of landing the right girl will statistically be lower. Story 2. When I am single and looking for them, around 1 or 2 every month. With my current girlfriend, usually once a week, skipping maybe 1 week a month if we have some other obligation during the weekend. Story 3. I'm married now, but at my peak, I was going on about 15 first dates a year, with maybe 1 or 2 of those turning into multiple dates. I would send out about 20 to 30 messages a day, almost always custom-tailored to each person, never form letters or anything generic, but sheer volume necessitated some messages saying essentially the same thing. I would get a reply about once or twice a week. I also averaged about 5 to 10 in real-life approaches a day. If you do the math, you would see this is a 99% rejection rate. This is despite the fact that at the time I was over 6 feet tall, had over $1 million in the bank, was fit and relatively muscular with a swimmer's body, not weightlifting ripped, drove a nice luxury sedan, had a successful career in the film industry, and was friendly, personable, and kind. I was also pretty damn good in bed until antidepressants affected that, if I do say so myself. Everything you would think would give me a leg up in dating. This is not me bragging. Except for my height and the fact that I am still driving the same, now old and beat-up car, I am none of those things anymore. This is me reassuring other men. It's hard for men, period. You have to keep at it and try not to invest in any relationship until she starts meeting you halfway on investment. You can and should pay for the first date, maybe even the first few as a dating strategy. That kind of investment is just part of the paradigm, but don't hinge on a yes or no from a woman you approach. You can't let rejection get you down, not only for your own mental health, but because it will actually improve your chances of success. Women can sense when you need or really want them to say yes, and the pressure tends to scare them off. You have to present it like it would be really fun for both of you to go out, but you will still have fun whether she agrees to come or not. Story 4. Single, probably about 1 date per week. Most of them are first and last dates. It is pretty rare for me to meet and actually connect with many people. However, I have recently met a girl I really like, so I am hoping I will not have to go on more first dates. Story 5. I have not gone on a date in over a year and a half. I am trying, but between work, my peace, and dating applications being less than helpful, it has been pretty stagnant. However, I did just get on Hinge, and so far that has been much more enjoyable. I have actually had a few conversations, so here is hoping. Story 6. 0. It's a lack of effort. I'm leaving it up to the woman at this point. I'm letting fate decide how they have been doing this whole time. I have worked on myself. I am a changed man. I want a woman confident enough to say she's interested first. Sorry, it's not fair, but I think culturally right now it just works better. Not to mention it will prove to me that if there is a problem in the relationship from her perspective, she will have the confidence to bring it up to me respectfully. She will have faith that in her past it may not have gone well, but to give me the benefit of the doubt. The devil is in the details. Not to mention, men are not feeling appreciated by women for our life experience. I understand women feel the same way. Well, I understand your situation pretty well, maybe not 100%, but enough to be empathetic to your struggles and way of life. Do you understand men's? Our bodies, our culture, the way our hormones work? Maybe right now men need to feel the chivalry of strong women to restore the faith that the genders don't mean each other harm. That the evil in the world wants us hating each other because the more chaos and conflict the better for capitalism. You can't exploit and profit off of a harmonic society. Story 7. I have been on a total of 9 first dates. Half of those resulted in a second date. 2 lasted longer than 2 months. 1 has lasted 30 years. Story 8. I barely dated when I was in my 20s, but once I hit my 30s, it was like someone flipped a switch. I went from less than 1 date a year to dating multiple people at a time. Story 9. I am 34 years old and have not dated since I was about 20. I am 5 feet 6 inches tall, which is considered a disadvantage on the dating market, so I do not bother. Story 10. When I was single, I dated 1 to 3 people a week, and then more consistently with about 3 people that I clicked with before becoming exclusive. Story 11. No dating applications. Avidly social. 3 to 4 first dates per year. Add a few for a handful of second and third dates. Have to ask out 7 to 15 women to go on each first date. Have been single for 4 years now. Story 12. In college, I aimed for 1 date a week. I was a frugal dater, but I had a great time. I got married the day after I graduated. I knew my odds of success would drop dramatically after I left college. Story 13. When I am actively looking and trying, I find a couple each month. When I am not trying, it varies between once every couple of months to once every 2 years at the longest. Story 14. I used to go once a week when married. Since that ended, it slowed down, but it has been picking up in the last year, 2 or 3 times a month lately. Story 15. Currently single and not looking. I go on probably 1 to 2 dates per week. I genuinely enjoy meeting new people. Sometimes it leads to more, sometimes it does not. Story 16. My wife and I tend to go out to eat somewhere every week. Of course, the kids have to come along too. I would say the last time it was just us was 3 or 4 months ago. Story 17. I would say I am below average in looks. I would give myself a 3 out of 10. This year, I have had 6 first dates so far and multiple second, third, and more dates. I am still seeing a couple of them to see where it goes. I focus on compatibility and do not chase after women. I am a 35-year-old male. I hope that helps. Story 18. When I was single, I usually went on dates once a week or every other week depending on how hard I was trying to find someone. I had a few go to 4 to 5 dates. Story 19. I would usually go on a date with a new woman every week. In total, it would be hundreds, but I was usually in a relationship, so I only spent a few adult years single. Story 20. Over the last few years, I have gone on about 5 to 8 dates in a year. Obviously, it has not gone too well. Last year, I went on a few dates with a girl, but that ended. I have not gone on a single date this year. Story 21. If I am looking, generally 1 or 2 a month. Currently 0. I do not have an interest in having a long-term relationship, and frankly, my opinion on family and kids is much less optimistic than in the early 2010s. Why would I bring a child into a world that I regularly consider completely troubled and backwards? Story 22. When I was in my 20s, I averaged 7 dates per year at times when I was single. Now that I am in my mid-40s and prefer my own company 99% of the time, I have only dated 5 women in the last 2 years. Story 23. Lost count. I have been with the same girl since college, for many years and counting. I don't know how I convinced her, but she seems okay with it. Story 24. Currently 0. I had 3 dates last October, and in my prime, I could get about 1 date every 2 weeks. However, I do not like the town I am currently in, and I want to move back to another city I previously lived in, so dating would be pretty much pointless. Some intimacy would be nice in the meantime, but I am not attractive, so I will have to wait at least another year. Story 25. I am not sure what average means here, but I am okay looking. So far, I have been on 6 first dates this year. One of these led to a casual relationship until I moved away, and another led to a really great platonic friendship. Story 26. When I was trying dating last year, I went on about 5 to 6 dates but no second date. I met my girlfriend in January, and we made our relationship official in April. Story 27. 24 and single. Approximately 50 first dates in the past year. About 10 second dates. Had intimate encounters about 6 times. Experienced really great relationships with 3 different girls, lots of chemistry. Currently still talking with one of those 3. We will see what the future holds, but I am grateful for all the incredible experiences I have had regardless. Story 28. Oh, that would definitely upset my wife. So 0. If you mean me taking my wife out on a date, which is reasonable, then about every other week with a minimum of once a month depending on work, schedules, children, family, and so on. Some family events count, like weddings with dancing or, in my case, birthdays with laser tag and bowling, but not paintball because you shoot your wife one time. Thanks for the reminder. I think we need to do dinner and a movie this weekend or something. Story 29. I might be slightly above average. I never did too well, averaging one first date every 6 months until I turned 25, with not many second dates. I finally paid for Hinge, the only dating app one would recommend, and started sending many personalized likes and messages. It seems the numbers game finally worked out, but I think it is because free Hinge has relatively low volume compared to free Tinder. I now average about one date per month. I could be going on a couple more, but I have to watch my spending. Story 30. My wife and I try to go on a date at least twice a month, at minimum once a month, and more if possible. Story 31. I have not been on a date since my divorce. I am not sure if I even want to after this. Prior to my marriage, which was short-lived, I would say 1 to 3 dates a year. Story 32. 0. The last time I went out was 4 to 5 years ago. If I figure out life again and start doing social activities a couple of times a week, I am sure I could easily find a partner. Story 33. When I was single, probably 2 to 3 times a month. I would consider myself average build, 5 feet 6 inches, which got in the way a lot. I have been told I am charismatic and funny though. Story 34. I think I have dated 7 people in my life so far. It is very hard to find people willing to date. In my experience, women tend to put in less effort. Story 35. I did not try last year and went on 3 or 4 first dates. I have tried this year and have been on 0. Go figure. Story 36. 0 dates since my last relationship ended. Before that, probably 1 date every 1 to 2 months. When I was in my hoe phases, a bit more. One time I had 2 first dates on the same day. Story 37. I have been on a few dates but never really counted how many times. It almost always ended with me being ignored. Recently, I have completely stopped dating. This is probably also because I am in a country where dating is taboo. Story 38. The last time I entered the dating pool, it resulted in 2 dates. I just started trying again, so maybe I will get at least 3 this time. Story 39. I have to go on a date every year, or my family starts setting me up with people. However, I go on 4 or 5 dates a year that I don't tell them about. Story 40. When I am in a relationship, I try to go on at least 1 date per week. I have been in 3 relationships. 1 lasted 2 years, 1 lasted 5 months, and 1 lasted barely a month. I have had a couple of other dates outside of relationships. There were probably a few more if we count things that were practically dates but the girl claimed were not because, as if it were a crime to have feelings for the person you confide in. If you want a yearly average, the math is difficult. Story 41. When I was dating, I focused on 1 person at a time. Until I met my wife, depending on the person, I went on 1 to 3 dates every 2 weeks. When I matched with my now wife, it was 1 to 2 dates a week. Story 42. When I was looking for my wife from 1998 to 2002, I went on about 80 coffee dates, mostly from cold approaches. I approached close to 200 women with a ratio of about 4 yes to 10 no's because I was terrible at it in the beginning. Out of those, I found about 15 women I went on actual dates with, leading to 2 girlfriends and my now wife. Story 43. 2 to 3 times a week when I was single. Dating applications and public events. Meeting people. It took a few months of refining my profile, messaging, and pictures, but once I did, it was like a paradigm shift. Story 44. Currently, I have no interest in dating. When I was looking, I only received 1 date per month. I am very reserved and introverted. Story 45. I always found it interesting how different dating is for men versus women. My brother goes through phases where he has 3 dates in 1 week, then nothing for a month. Story 46. I went on one practice date before I met my wife. That was one time in 4 years because I was a college athlete and had no time. After I met my wife, I now go on a date about once a month. Story 47. It depends. If I really wanted to, I could get a few dates a week, but serial dating does not really interest me. It is very rare that I meet a woman I truly connect with on a deeper level. Story 48. Depends on how active I am on dating. In 2023, I broke up with my last girlfriend. Then I went on about a dozen dates. Story 49. My boyfriend and I go on a date about once a month if we are lucky. I go on 1 or 2 dates with other potential partners each year when the desire is particularly strong. Story 50. I became single in mid-2024 after ending an 8-year relationship. I'm 31 now, and honestly, no regrets. Leaving her was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I stayed off all apps until January 2025 because I wanted to be alone. A few months ago, when I was more active on dating apps, I usually got a couple of matches a week and went on dates fairly often, at least once a week. Most first dates went well enough to set up a second date, but I typically canceled those plans by the very next day or a few days later. I would come home, reflect, and really think deeply about whether I liked her enough to keep it going or if I was just horny. Post-nut clarity is real. Now, I'm not saying I'm God's gift to women, but nevertheless, I've worked hard in my life to get where I am today, especially financially. I have decent looks. I'm actually 6 feet tall and quite fit, and I've saved enough to buy a home outright. So yes, I've developed enough self-respect not to settle for someone I don't genuinely connect with, especially not someone average whose entire personality revolves around long walks and espresso martinis. Is it shallow to say that? I don't think so. I've worked hard to accomplish what I have, and I don't see the rationale behind diminishing my own accomplishments just because I'm a man. Also, as cruel as it may sound, I don't have such a tight biological clock, so my options are definitely not as limited as a 30 to 33-year-old woman's would be. I feel far less pressure to rush into things. I somehow managed to get them to open up a lot and have heard some crazy confessions that definitely should not be shared on first dates. I'm not a man whore, so I feel no particular desire to tap and bail. The last thing I need is herpes. One girl told me she has herpes as we were about to do the deed, and I bolted out of there within minutes. Yes, a lot of conversations die out, and I also get unmatched frequently. This is a two-way street. But I haven't really used Hinge or Bumble in weeks. I'm just tired. I'm thinking of attending some public events more often though. Story 51. I went on one this year, but it cannot be classified as an actual date because it was reconnecting with an old school friend. So, in the last 2 years, it has been 0. Story 52. First dates? I mean, if I start dating someone exclusively, I go on a lot of dates, but I don't think that's what you're looking for. Story 53. Back when I was single, it was a good year when I had 2 first dates, and a bad year was when I had none. This was before online dating when things were supposedly easier. Story 54. Since my divorce, I have gone on 0 dates in 3 years. Objectively, I would say I am a mid-6 out of 10, but with character upgrades, I land closer to an 8 all in. There is definitely some user error here, as I do not play into the chase. To be honest, I am what a lot of women say they want, say being the operative word. Story 55. My wife and I go out for a date every couple of weeks. It helps to get out of the house, so we drop our son off at grandma's and go have fun for the evening like we used to before having children. Story 56. Quite a lot actually, but to be honest, it simply feels like a waste of time. Not only is it time-consuming, but it is also very expensive. Story 57. I have been single for 2.5 years since I was 20. Since then, I have had 3 partners and I am now 40. In short, nothing significant. I am clever, funny, tall, confident, tidy, enjoy hobbies, have good friends, and have a good job. The downside is that I work long hours. I am overweight. I am amicably divorced and co-parenting 2 young daughters. I suspect that this combination places me at average. I have never used dating applications as I never had the need and they did not exist when I was younger. I was picky with dates as I am somewhat sapiosexual. Story 58. When I was single in my 20s, I tried to keep it to Tuesday and Thursday nights and hang out with them on Friday and Saturday at social events. Story 59. I am non-monogamous, so I have a non-binary partner and a woman I see occasionally. I have taken a break recently, but when I am actively dating, I go on a few dates every month. Usually, there is a vibe check such as coffee, a drink, or a park date, followed by an actual date to determine where we want it to go from there. This includes continuing to date, friends with benefits, or other arrangements. I rarely have a one-night stand, but sometimes we hook up after the vibe check or after the first date. Story 60. I was single for the past 1.5 years after a 10-year relationship and averaged 3 to 5 dates per week, nearly every week. I am an extrovert, more fit than average, and about average in looks, nothing breathtaking but not unappealing. I am 39 years old, 5 feet 8 inches tall, have a great job, and would rate myself probably a 7. I had a very specific person I was looking for, and I finally found her. Like all things, dating is a game. You have to learn how the game is played and what the rules are. It becomes easy after that. There are thousands of great videos on the science of dating and how women internally process this. How to talk, how to improve your body language, and how to read theirs. Craft a quality profile, be selective in who you swipe on, and always lead with a tailored, open-ended prompt that you know they will find interesting, mildly insulting, or best of all, funny. Go on the dates and treat them like your new social life. You are just going out to meet a friend for drinks. But make sure to always maintain the sexual tension. Flirt, tease, maintain moderate eye contact. Ask more questions than you answer. Be vague at times. Don't overshare. Playfully sidestep random questions. Raise the tension and mystique. Most importantly, have fun. There are step-by-step guides on how to do this all over YouTube. I think people need to stop being so fatalistic and go get exactly what they want in life. Nobody will hand it to you, and no one is going to crawl through your window. Story 61. This year, maybe 3 to 4. I get some matches, but if you have good conversation skills, you can meet up within a week or two. Story 62. Whenever my girlfriend visited, we always went shopping or had brunch. However, according to her, it is only a date if I dress nicely and take her to a nice restaurant with a menu where you cannot even pronounce the names of the items. So I guess none were true dates. Story 63. I have about 1 date a month through the dating app Tinder. Sometimes I chat with strangers in bars, and those conversations occasionally lead to dates. However, I find that in-person chats like that usually do not develop into relationships. Story 64. I don't plan to date until I feel ready. There are many reasons why I don't date yet, mainly because I am a military brat. I move so much that there is no point in entering a relationship, as I don't want a long-distance relationship. Also, I lack confidence in making the first move. Story 65. When I was single and just out of COVID-19 with people getting vaccinated, I went on 7 to 8 dates a week, including first, second, and third dates. I got exhausted and always took a break after a couple of weeks, then repeated the following month. Story 66. Currently, and for quite some time, I have had 0 dates. I am older, poor, short, and I do not look like George Clooney in Ocean's 11. Honestly, I would not know how to get a date, and if someone I found attractive asked me out, I would probably freeze on the spot. Story 67. I am old and extremely lazy these days, so not many now. But 5 to 15 years ago, let's break those years down. 5 years ago, I could get a Tinder or Bumble date every 2 weeks if I really tried. Maybe make that a month because at my age everyone has kids, so I have longer to convince them that I am worth paying for a sitter or that I won't waste their time that one weekend their dad actually comes to get them. Looking back 10 to 15 years ago, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. 2 major changes. 1, I was younger and more put together in life. 2, there used to not be the swipe left or right system. You could send a message to anyone at any time. Plenty of fish used to have a subject line like email. That subject line made or broke you. Everyone was putting, "Hey, cutie," or something like that. All you had to do was say something enticing or intriguing and have a funny profile to get a response. I mean, just barely enticing or intriguing enough to get them to look at your profile. My profile was written like an infomercial. Bored? Lonely? Tired of awkward dates with meaningless conversation? Need something new in your life? I know just the thing for you. Then, my favorite line that I remember was, dating me is so easy that even your grandmother could do it. Judge me how you want, but back then I could get a date weekly, and I am not attractive and most certainly not photogenic. Think of Tekashi 69 or Trippie Redd. SoundCloud rappers. Their music is absolute garbage, but they look different. They get attention, and you have to get someone's attention first. Story 68. First, you have to find a girl who is faithful to her boyfriend. Unfortunately, many women these days are not, so they are not worth spending time on during a first date. Story 69. I am a 25-year-old veteran in college. Most of my peers are 18 to 20 years old, so I do not often hang out with them. I cannot bring myself to hang out with a teenager. Story 70. When I was single and truly trying, I had about 1 to 3 encounters a month. Most ended in sex, but I usually did not care about the woman, so it never developed into anything meaningful. Story 71. In my 20s, 1 to 2 dates per week during peak seasons and 1 to 2 per month in low seasons. This was before Tinder, so internet dating was still useful and not full of fake women's profiles, artificial intelligence bots, and Nigerian scammers. You would message someone who was a real human. They would read your message and either ignore you or respond. Story 72. I have been single for a little over 3.5 years, and I have been on 6 dates during that time. 5 of them were first dates, and 3 of those were with people I really wanted to see again but who ghosted me. It really makes you wonder why you even bother trying. Story 73. I think you will find that the average male on this planet does not date as much as you think. In fact, many average men have dropped out of the dating scene altogether. Story 74. Every other weekend. But I am also a social butterfly. I just talk to people everywhere I go, exchange information, and see what they are about. I am also bald and short, but my friends who are taller with hair are not as social. In fact, when going out with them, I bring groups of girls back to our group, and they just stand there and do not really talk to them. Bottom line, just talk to people you find attractive. Eventually, you get used to it and it becomes easy. Looks do not matter. Story 75. I average about 2 dates a week. Some weeks as many as 6, but I am doing doubles in that case. Mostly first dates and a couple of recurring dates with women I am consistently seeing. Story 76. None. Gave up dating at age 29 in 2014. Now 40 and focused on myself. Embraced the single lifestyle completely. Story 77. When I am partnered, at least once a week. When I am single, it depends on how single. If we are talking about first dates with new people, maybe 1 to 2 a month. But if both pass the initial impression after the first date, probably 1 to 3 a week to really understand if there is long-term potential or burgeoning new relationship energy. Story 78. This is highly dependent on appearance and location. Where I live in the Midwest in a smaller city, an average-looking man goes on 0 to 1 dates a year, which usually go nowhere. Meanwhile, even my overweight or below-average-looking women friends can, with 0 effort, go on 3 dates in a week. Story 79. Since becoming single about 3 years ago, I have had 6 first dates and 1 situationship, then about a year of just looking for fun. I have since decided to give up on trying to date and go with the flow instead. I seem to get more attention since focusing on myself, which is great for when I do occasionally go out. However, being a romantic and wanting more than a situation seems to be out of the norm where I live. Story 80. There was a time when I would have 2 to 3 dates lined up each week, which is an ideal range I can handle, but I can also increase that. I do not keep track of how many dates I have been on. Story 81. I do not go on dates in the American sense. I simply ask a woman to stay with me for a weekend to spend time together, usually when it is clear there is mutual interest. This can, of course, include going for drinks or to a restaurant, but primarily it is about intimacy. Story 82. There was a time between September 2023 and April 2024 when I was heavily dating. I was mainly trying to forget my ex, and because my therapist at the time was terrible, she would yawn during sessions. I went on many dates. One day I went on 3 dates, which was insane. One night I went on a date that ended a bit past midnight, then drove about an hour to see another girl right after. Looking back, I was not mentally well. In February 2024, I changed therapists. In the first session, I learned more than I had in the previous 6 months with the former therapist. That change set me straight. I learned a lot from my new therapist, and right after I deleted all the dating apps, my last match became my current girlfriend. Story 83. I have gone on 2 dates in the last 3 years. One was with my ex, although we were broken up at the time. The other did not lead anywhere. Story 84. When I was single, I had 2 to 4 first dates per week. Some of those were followed up with the same person if I liked them or wanted to have sex after an earlier date. I think I peaked at 11 per week, but that was manic behavior after a breakup. Story 85. Honestly, your location plays a massive role in this. In my small hometown, if I did not cold approach anyone, dating apps were ineffective. I have been living in a big city with 5 million people for some time, and my dating life has never been easier. Most people would probably describe me as average in looks, but I had no worries going on a date every week with a different woman if I liked her. Story 86. I am a 29-year-old male. When I was single 2 years ago, I went on about 10 to 15 first dates a year, probably 12 second dates and 10 third dates. I am definitely below average in looks, but a decent conversationalist and very funny. Story 87. I have been on 1 date in 4 years, and that is genuinely trying on dating applications. I have moved twice, so that is certainly a factor, but dating applications just do not seem to work for me. Story 88. It really depends on how much you want it and how much you make yourself desirable to others. At one point, I went out 3 times a day, which was hilarious because to simplify logistics, I took all my dates to the same restaurant. The waitress, a middle-aged lady, recognized me and gave me an evil eye. By the 3rd visit of the day, I didn't need to see the menu anymore. I remember breaking up with a girlfriend in the morning, getting 3 new phone numbers that night, and having 2 planned meetups immediately. Sometimes it's really about your approach plus a bit of luck and chance. Most of the time, if you go somewhere hoping to meet someone, it never happens. Other times, you're at a club, spot a girl looking around, you catch each other's eyes, and one thing leads to another. She might ask if you want to grab her breast, and later that night you're at her place asking if you brought protection. Most of the time, nothing really happens and there are no dates. I am a tall man over 6 feet, athletic build with abs, have a decent car and disposable income, and am definitely at least above average looking. Still, despite my success, my rejection rate is over 95%, even though I do have hot streaks like the examples above. If you want more dates, honestly, the best ones come from recommendations and introductions from friends. The worst ones come from clubs and bars, though many of those led to multiple 2-year relationships for me. Story 89. 0. It is really not worth putting time and effort into. Even if you get lucky, there is a 99% chance she is just using you and will leave the moment a better man shows up. The earlier you realize this, the better for you. It is far more rewarding to work on long-term personal goals and desires in your life. If you really feel the need, you can spend money to get whatever you want. Story 90. Woefully few. I am married, but we have not been good about going on consistent dates. Probably one every few months. I need to improve, though my wife is also slightly agoraphobic, which makes it a little difficult. Story 91. Before I gave up in 2009, 2 per year if I was lucky or unlucky, you could say. It was a huge waste of time. Story 92. I have better things to do. Dating culture has become twisted, weird, and does not appeal to me anymore. Story 93. As many as I can. That means 0 because I do not meet people anywhere, and I am not looking either. But if someone were to come to me and say, "Take me on a date," I would go. What is the worst that could happen? Story 94. When I was single but not looking, 0. When I was looking, a couple per week. Now that I am in a relationship, 1 to 2 per month for restaurants, and a lot more for activities depending on what you call a date. Story 95. With my last girlfriend, at least once a week. Have to keep the romance alive. Single, but I will find someone soon. Story 96. I had around 10 to 15 dates in the last 12 months. I often got a second date, but it did not go that far. Story 97. I don't know if I'm average. I think slightly above. I get a lot of dates, maybe 20 a year, but I don't really count. Some of them I ask for and some I get asked. Most are not through dating apps, as I don't actually use them to date. They can get very expensive. The things you should work on the most are charisma, clothing style, skincare, and choosing the right perfume. Story 98. On average, I date one person a year, and that is enough to burn me out. The last person I dated ended in an awful breakup. A few weeks later, I found out she tried to harm herself. That stopped me from wanting to date for a long time. It did not help that shortly after learning this, I ended up in a relationship called a friendship that was so far from friendship unless you have rocks in your head. She was one of those girls who excuses her behavior by saying she flirts with everyone. She said she only ever wanted things to be surface level, where surface level meant telling me about her period, her preferences, and the birthdays of all her sisters, brothers, and parents, that kind of surface level. There were a date or two here and there since then, but I am done. Those experiences destroyed my faith in people being sane and worth the pain. Story 99. None. People drain my energy. If I am ever lucky enough to find a person who raises my energy level, I would ask her out and hope she says yes. Otherwise, there are too many crazy people out there. I would rather stay out of the dating game. Story 100. About 3 to 4 times every 2,000 years. You can make a point, but at the end of the day, no date will come out of that. Story 101. Depends if I am trying or not. If I am trying, probably 2 to 3 a month. If not, very rarely. I usually get a second date and get lucky maybe twice a year or so. Though the longest relationship I have had since high school was 4 months. I am 31. Story 102. It is funny how some women say men are dogs and players. Body count should not count. And men are this or that. Most of us are average people who do not date as much as others think. We are fine wanting to date seriously or being single. Story 103. I consider myself average. Before, I didn't go on many dates, mostly because I was shy to talk with women or because I was interested in or dating someone. But this year, after being out of the dating pool for 1 year due to my last relationship, I decided to be more straightforward, talk more, and use dating apps properly. I have been going on dates almost every week, sometimes with different women, and the majority of the dates lead to a second meeting. Story 104. In college, with Tinder, I went on a date maybe once a month and was stood up 3 times a month on average. They would agree to a time and location and then not show up or call. Then there was good message rapport that failed when trying to schedule a date, resulting in a ratio of 1 to 3 to 5. This also came from treating dating like a part-time job. I had better odds just asking women in person, but it was still less than 1 per month. Story 105. I doubt I am the average person. I went on about 4 dates and found the girl who seemed to like me the most. We have been together for 28 years and married for 18. Honestly, I wish I had dated more before I committed, but I am a codependent demisexual. Thank you for reading. Story 106. About once a week, my significant other of 5 years and I try to set aside a date day. It doesn't have to be much, like preparing some sandwiches and walking in the park, having a picnic, or gonna watch a movie. On weekends, there is usually one night when it's just the 2 of us, so we often go to a cocktail bar or something similar. We both work. I have Dungeons and Dragons on Tuesday and every other Sunday, and Warhammer on Thursdays. She usually has Japanese lessons on Wednesday and Tuesday, so Saturday or Friday night is basically our designated date day because we schedule it in. Story 107. When I was single, I typically went out once a month, sometimes more often, sometimes less. With my boyfriend, we go out once a week. Story 108. Very few. That is why I usually have long-term girlfriends. I do not have to go out on dates with new people. Story 109. If I am over 6 feet tall, am I automatically disqualified from reporting on what mine used to be when I was single? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.